What's that?
My daughter.
The ending of the MEG 2 The Trench pretty much leaves the door wide open for another chapter, and that's exactly why fans are buzzing about the MEG 3. Even though the second movie didn't exactly win over critics, it still managed to bite a decent chunk out of the global box office. That alone shows there's still an audience for fun, slightly ridiculous creature features that don't take themselves too seriously. It's the kind of franchise that doesn't pretend to be deep or emotional, it just wants you to grab your popcorn and enjoy the chaos of Jason Statham punching prehistoric sharks in the face. The first MEG back in 2018 was directed by Jon Turteltaub, with Jason Statham leading the charge as deep-sea explorer Jonas Taylor. That movie surprised a lot of people, not because it was groundbreaking, but because it turned into a genuine hit when no one really expected it to. The mix of big-budget underwater spectacle and Statham's deadpan hero vibes worked surprisingly well, so a sequel was inevitable. For the MEG 2 The Trench, indie director Ben Wheatley took over a pretty unexpected choice considering his background in darker, more experimental films like Kill List and High Rise. But somehow, that offbeat approach made the second movie stand out for being just another monster sequel. It gave the series a slightly different flavor, something that could be expanded even more if the MEG 3 actually happens. Right now, though, there's no official green light for a third movie. Warner Brothers and the creative team seem to be waiting to see how the MEG 2 performs on the big screen and streaming platforms. That's because big shark movies cost a lot of money to make. Reports say the sequel's budget was somewhere between $150 and $200 million, so it would need to make around $400 million globally just to be considered a success. It's a tall order, but not impossible. The first MEG grossed over $500 million back in 2018, so if audiences are still in the mood for deep-sea mayhem, there's definitely a chance. The real challenge, however, comes from how the sequel has been received. Critics were not kind to the MEG 2 The Trench, giving it a dismal 28% on Rotten Tomatoes, way below the first film's already modest 46%. It's not exactly the best sign for a potential trilogy, but then again, this isn't the type of movie that lives or dies by reviews. People don't buy tickets to the MEG because they expect an Oscar-level script. They go because they want to see Jason Statham stab a shark with a harpoon while riding a jet ski. So even though the critics rolled their eyes, the audience could still make it profitable enough to justify a third installment. As of now, the MEG 3 hasn't been officially confirmed, and there's no release date in sight. But that hasn't stopped the creative team from talking about it. Director Ben Wheatley has been pretty open about his hopes for the series to become a full-blown trilogy. He even hinted before the MEG 2 came out that he had ideas for where the story could go next. It's not a guarantee, but it's definitely a sign that the people behind the franchise aren't done exploring what's lurking beneath the surface. If the MEG 3 does happen, the cast will probably bring back the familiar faces that have become the backbone of the series. Jason Statham, of course, would have to return as Jonas Taylor, the shark-fighting, deep-sea diving, unflappable action hero. His presence basically defines the whole tone of the franchise. Without him, it's hard to imagine anyone else pulling off that same mix of intensity and tongue-in-cheek charm. Alongside him, we'd likely see Cliff Curtis as Mac, Sophia Kai as Mei Ying, and Paige Kennedy as DJ, all of whom survived the trench and now feel like a sort of core crew for the series. There's also Jing Woo, who joined in the second movie as a new ally, adding more action credibility and expanding the franchise's international appeal. Interestingly, Li Bingbing, who played Su Yin in the first film, didn't return for the sequel, but there's a decent chance she could come back if the MEG 3 happens. Her absence was noticed, and her return could make for a solid emotional hook next time around. When it comes to the story for the MEG 3, there's no official word yet, but the sequel did leave a few breadcrumbs to follow. Producer Lorenzo Di Bonaventura mentioned that the MEG 2 intentionally leaned into a slightly lighter, more comedic tone. After realizing that audiences responded well to the fun, over-the-top parts of the first movie, they decided to amp up the humor and make it more self-aware. It's still PG-13, so the goal is to keep it entertaining and accessible to younger audiences while still delivering the shark-fueled action fans expect. That mix of camp and spectacle is likely the direction the MEG 3 would continue, something that feels more like a big, silly summer blockbuster than a gritty creature thriller. Ben Wheatley also seems to have plenty of ideas for where the story could go next. Before the second movie was even released, he mentioned that there's still a lot left to explore in the MEG universe. He pointed out how international the series has become, from the cast to the settings, and that this global element could be key to keeping the franchise fresh. It's a clever approach because it allows the movies to keep moving to new locations and include different cultural backdrops, kind of like what Fast and Furious did when it expanded beyond just car races. In fact, the MEG has that same big ensemble adventure vibe, where every new film can add more characters, more chaos, and bigger stakes without really needing to reinvent the wheel. As long as there are new monsters to fight and Statham's around to deliver his trademark one-liners, the formula can easily stretch into multiple sequels. One of the main reasons the MEG series works is because it doesn't overcomplicate things. The concept is simple. There's a gigantic shark, it's hungry, and our heroes have to stop it. That's it. The second movie upped the ante by giving us not just one, but 3 massive megalodons, plus other prehistoric sea creatures thrown in for good measure. So figuring out a storyline for the MEG 3 wouldn't be hard. They could go even bigger. More sharks, maybe something weirder like a hybrid or a prehistoric underwater ecosystem that's been hidden for centuries. There's a bunch of directions to go, and none of them would feel too far-fetched for this series. Now, the ending of the MEG 2 actually teases some of that potential. It wraps up on a pretty upbeat note. Jonas and his team manage to survive the onslaught of villains and monsters. But there's one key detail that leaves room for a sequel. Out of the 3 megalodons in the movie, one of them, a female named Heike, survives. She was raised in captivity and trained by Ju Ming, which made her more intelligent and somewhat obedient. At the end, she spares the heroes, seemingly because of that bond. But that peace may not last long. The movie hints that Heike is pregnant since it's mating season, meaning we could be looking at a bunch of baby MEGs wreaking havoc in the next installment. That setup alone gives the MEG 3 a clear direction. Imagine multiple young megalodons causing chaos across the world's oceans, while Jonas and his team have to stop them before they grow into unstoppable killing machines. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.